What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Guardians of the Future. Took last week off because, I don't know, quite frankly, I'm just too busy to do this once a week. I'd like to do it more often, but too busy doing other podcasts and doing all kinds of writing and other things. And I had nothing to talk about last week. The captains weren't home, or they were home last time. I probably could have had something on there, but I don't know, I had other stuff going on. But to talk captains, I brought in Michael Mahoney, one of my favorites from the Captains Press Box and Guardians Twitter. So we're going to talk a lot about some captains players. And we'll get into some other guys from the system, too, because Mike follows the system pretty closely and knows his baseball. So it should be a fun episode. Mike, thank you for jumping on and doing this with me. I appreciate it. Give me a second voice and, frankly, someone who sees a lot more captains baseball than I do these days.
Thanks for having me, Justin. It's been fun being up in the box, and I'm glad to continue to keep getting the invite for whatever reason. So I'm happy to lend whatever I can to the analysis for Lake County.
You lend quite a bit. Don't undersell yourself. Actually, we saw each other at the Guardians game Friday. They said, "Hey to you." My wife was like, "Who is that?" I'm like, "Well, this is Mike. He works for the Captains." And I showed her your Twitter bio. I'm like, "Well, chances are, if you've been in a room with Mike, he was probably the smartest person in it." She was very impressed by your Twitter bio. So you got that going for you.
Well, thanks. So yeah, that's those were in reference to, I guess, former and current day jobs. And this is a side gig for me, getting an opportunity to go out to watch the captains. And if you've watched MLB Game Day, you've seen my authorship, either good or bad, depending on how that game is going, because it can be a tricky interface.
It can. And the captains are tricky, too. Mike is underselling himself as how smart he is and how much he knows about baseball and how good he is up there. And honestly, the press box has been a lot of fun. I've been going up there, obviously, for a long time. And the faces have changed in the press box over the years, and it hasn't always had the same vibe, but it's been a lot of fun this year. The baseball talk is good. We're always talking about the draft, obviously, and the game and just all other stuff baseball going on. But it is kind of nonstop up there when you're up there with baseball. We are always going on something, and it's always a lot of fun, honestly. So I'm really enjoying the vibe this year, I have to say.
Oh, yeah, it's been a good environment for sure.
It has. All right, so let's get into some captain stuff. The pitching was bad. There were a lot of bad things on the road trip. They did not play well in Lansing. We're not talking about them because of how good or bad they didn't play. We're talking about them because some players have been very interesting for a while now. I just haven't mentioned the captains yet. And the guy we want to get into first is Nate Furman, friend of the show, former guest on this show. All of a sudden is a power hitter. I don't know. Like he came into the year with 0 career home runs. Now he has 5, and that puts him 11th in the Guardian system, along with guys like Khalil Watson and Alex Mooney, and he's right behind CJ Kayfus, and he's 1 behind Ralphie Velasquez. Like, I don't know where this came from, but you saw his 2-homer day. What was it, last homestand for the captains, the doubleheader? He had a 2-homer day, and those weren't cheapies. Like, it wasn't like he was just hitting them over the wall. He blasted those, and it looks like he's got like a new leg kick that he's incorporated this year, which is helping. And I talked to somebody else too, his signing scout. He said, they just told him to swing with more intent. I think it's led to some more uppercut in the swing too. But then he went out and hit 2 leadoff home runs in Lansing. So apparently Nate Furman is a power hitter now. That's all I can surmise from this.
Right, and you wouldn't have wagered on Nate Furman having a power breakout, but this is 4 home runs in the past 7 calendar days, I think it is. So he's having a bit of a tear. At the conclusion of the Lansing series, his OPS is up to 879. And as you might expect for a guy with Furman's bat to ball skills, that's on a 333 batting average, but also his OBP is 400. So he's not selling out entirely his approach for power either. And I think those things combined make him pretty interesting going forward. I didn't think that he'd be a guy like I probably would have comped him, if comps mean anything, to Nick Madrigal in the type of hitter I'd expect him to be. And Nick Madrigal, I don't know, has Nick Madrigal ever had 5 home runs in any season at any level? I don't think so.
I don't think he was in college.
Yeah, and so what Furman's doing right now, the changes to his approach, we'll see how long he can keep them rolling, but it's definitely better. A lot of what I watched him do last year was take pitches that were hittable and just watch them go by. He's been more aggressive in the zone on pitches he can do something with. And when he's swinging with more intent.
Yeah, definitely more intent. Still has a microscopic 5% swinging strike rate, which is, very Stephen Kwan-esque. And the strikeout rate is 20%. So then that's as of Saturday, not Sunday. but the rule of thumb there is like generally you double the swinging strike rate, and that's how you get strikeout rate for hitters and pitchers. And obviously, it can go in one direction or another by certain standard deviations, but he's got a 20% strikeout rate and a 5% swinging strike rate, which would suggest that he should probably have like a 12, 13. So there is still a lot of passivity there, and the walk rate is way down, which I'm kind of surprised by. The fact that A, he's still very passive, and B, the walk rate is down, which does concern me a little, but I'll take the hits. I mean, I think we know the patience is in there, right? Like, I don't think you have to worry that all of a sudden he's going to start chasing everything and he's going to make bad swing decisions. That's not his game. I'm just curious to see when he starts blending the two, but I'm very excited now. I mean, I thought that Furman could be like I hate to say he could be a Stephen Kwan, because that's hard to do, because Stephen Kwan is just a very unicorn type player, and you hate comparing guys to guys who do specific things very well that a lot of baseball players don't do well. But there is some Stephen Kwan ability there, I feel like, and he's going to need to do that because he is a second baseman who is limited defensively a little bit. But hey, the guy can run, and if he can pop 5 to 10 home runs a year, makes him a much more interesting player. I just enjoy watching him play. He is kind of a spark plug type dude, and everybody really seems to like him too, which makes things much more fun.
That is definitely a perk, and he's played primarily second base. I don't know if it's worth mentioning, and I definitely don't think this is like a major league type of thing where you'd expect him to play it, but he's played a little bit of third base this year as well. I think they're just trying to get any sort of versatility they can out of their farm system, and while they've got guys in the opportunity to do it, they'll rotate their infielders around. So I wouldn't expect that to continue much longer. I do think his defensive home is second base, and probably just second base. But yeah, he's going to have to make a lot of contact. He probably does hit he probably hits a lot of his OPS right now. He has been patient in the past, and it's 5% swinging strike rate. Arguably, he's been maybe too patient still. If I'm understanding that properly. So yeah, he has definitely taken strides the past month, especially.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. I'll be curious to see if he gets the promotion to Akron in the second half. Because I'm just trying to think off the top of my head of all the infielders they have in Akron, and Aaron Bracho's still there, but they paid him a lot of money, and I don't know what they want to do there. But Furman seems like a good candidate to go up because he spent a lot of time in Lake County last year, and granted, he struggled a lot, but when you see a guy come back to a level and start to hit the way Furman is and play the way he is, you think he's figured it out, and it's time for a new challenge. So if playing time opens up in Akron, whether it's they decide to move on from Bracho, they're moving Cleo Watson everywhere. Milan Tolentino is kind of a glove first player. Yoenis Valdez is still there, I guess. Yeah, Cairo's playing everywhere. You got Frias. So, yeah, someone's got to go, I guess, before they do that. But that might be, I don't know, come draft time. So it might be a little bit longer for Furman, maybe longer than he would like. And I don't know, as we know with the system, they tend to leave guys in spots that they probably shouldn't be. But that's out of everyone's control except for theirs, unfortunately. What are you going to do?
Right. Yeah, the
right.
maybe stark example, what we came up to hopefully talk about. We were hoping to be able to talk about some starting pitchers that were cooking a little too long at high A, and then they blew up in Lansing, and suddenly would look like fools if we started talking about how much Parker Messick needs to be up in Double A, or Austin Peterson surprising people. But yes, that they do tend to keep people down a little while.
Yeah, we'll get to Messick and Peterson. I mean, even one bad start, we'll still mention how good they've been this year, because we're also going to talk about Akron pitching a little bit too as we move on. But we're talking about infielders moving around. Look, Alex Mooney has been off to a great start. Obviously, if you listen to this podcast before, I played my interview with him from earlier this year. Great kid, great bat, really good work ethic. Sounds like a team leader. I think he has all the traits you'd want to see. Little bit aggressive as a hitter. It's a very low walk rate. He likes to swing the bat, which this organization seems to like hitters that like to swing the bat. They don't like guys that walk. I don't know what that is or why that is, but that's the player they keep drafting. But the strange thing I can't get over is his arm. Like, it's a great arm strength. Like, I think if you put him in right field, like, the arm would play. It's definitely a quality arm. But what do we say? He's up to 8 throwing errors now, and 7 of them are from third base, and 2 are from shortstop, but we're pretty sure they're all throwing errors. It's not for lack of arm strength, but it's very bizarre. I don't know. He was a shortstop in college, like you were saying. Maybe he's adjusting, but that's like the one part of his game you're like, I don't know what's going on here. Otherwise, just having a fantastic first year.
Yeah, and I mean, credit to Mooney where it's due, absolutely. He's been aggressive. He swings a lot, but he's making good contact. He's almost precocious at pulling the ball. Most of his contact is pulled. When he pulls the ball, he hits the ball hard. It's generally at a pretty good launch angle, and you're seeing the fruit of that. Like he's had a bit more power than I expected him to have, at least game power. And in the field, he's smooth. His actions look good, and then sometimes the actions look good until he throws the ball. And it's strange to see what's going on there because it's not a consistent bugaboo. It's not him constantly chopping his feet when he's about to release from third base. He doesn't look necessarily out of rhythm on any of these throws. And maybe a few of them could have been scooped by a first baseman of, say, like a Joe Naranjo's type of glove, where basically anything within their catch radius is caught. But the majority of these have been sailed and or wide one way or the other too. So I'm not entirely sure what it's going to be for him in terms of settling down, and maybe he's rushing a little bit. But in any event, it's odd that he has this one flaw with his defensive profile, because otherwise he's a pretty good defensive infielder. I like his range at shortstop. At third base, it's almost an embarrassment of riches with his range to have him endeavors on that side of the infield usually. And at second base, all the things that make him a little too qualified for third base in terms of range, they carry over into second base. He's very good over there. Very athletic. The throws are not challenging for him there.
I like the catch radius. That's a football term we're bringing to baseball. I enjoy it. I don't think I've heard anybody use that term in a baseball context before, but we're branching out. I like it. Yeah, Naranjo is one of the better defensive first basemen. CJ Kayfus seems okay. We're going to talk about him.
He's all right.
A little bit, but yeah, the thing with Mooney, I feel pretty good about his chances of cleaning up whatever this is. Like if it's just like a new arm angle thing, and like we said, it's not an issue of strength, because more often than not, these throws are high, like they're going over the first baseman's head. I mean, has he thrown any that would have been that needed to be picked? Is it I think it's mostly been over, right? Or
I recall the 3 throwing error game. I think one of them was in the dirt a little bit and towards the what would be Kayfus's left side going towards third base. So in up the line a little bit. But I mean, that was one. That was more fluky. Generally, he's overthrowing.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty correctable thing. I'm not like overly concerned about it. And like if he has the arm strength, that's great. And I don't know, but I mean, pitchers also have the yips sometimes. I hope that's not the case with him, but
yeah, we don't need a Chuck block on our hands.
Jeez, no. I mean, hey, Chuck hit for a long time, so
he did.
It was an unfortunate end of his career. I was actually just watching the documentary about the '90s Yankees before this. He wasn't on there, but just remind me of that. That's been a good one. All right, another guy who's hitting the crap out of the ball is CJ Kayfus. My only thing here with CJ Kayfus is this: like, I want to be generally positive on this podcast because I'm hoping to talk to CJ next homestand. He's hitting the ball in the air, he's pulling it, he's doing all the things you want him to do offensively. And, he's moving left field a little bit. I don't know really if left field is a viable home for him. I haven't seen him in person left field, so you'd have to let me know. But my only thing is, it just seems like every time he gets a breaking ball, he comes up empty. Like he's punishing fastballs. If you throw him a fastball, you might as well just know you made a mistake. But like the last homestand we were talking, it was a Friday game, and one of the relievers who was throwing pretty hard, I think it was it Fort Wayne or was it who was the last homestand?
I think it was Fort Wayne.
Yeah, he threw like a 95 mile an hour fastball out of the bullpen, and Kayfus demolished it. But the pitch before was like a 60-foot curveball, 59-foot curveball, and he just swung in the dirt at it. So that's my only concern. It's like I'm just wondering if the breaking stuff is going to be an issue, if he's gonna be able to adjust to that at the next level, because I think he's ready for the next level, honestly.
Right. And I think that he'll probably, when he goes to double A, this will be something that has to be addressed more frequently because the breaking balls are going to be better. And the scouting, advanced scouting, maybe that's a little bit different at double A, but certainly the capability of pitchers to exploit that as a weakness becomes higher as you go up the ranks. Now I took a little bit of a note, and what I had on Kayfus was picks up spin late, backdoor pitches full consistently. If it's in the zone, he's swinging late at it because he's like, oh, that's in the zone now. And this is not a slight. This is a very difficult thing to do, and not anything that if I went up there and they threw a 50 a strike that was in the batter's box for 45 feet, I'm gonna swing late and look like a doofus and like in a much
Same.
more real way. Kayfus can foul that pitch off every now and again, but he's consistently late on it. And it's a pitch that you'd expect a guy who can handle that velocity. Like you said, he smoked that pitch. It was 96 in a low inside corner, a little bit of like, left-handed hitters, nitro zone, but he got to it. That's not an easy pitch to get to. And when he gets the pitch he wants to swing at, he does damage generally. And he's been pretty patient at the bat as well. He's not striking out a ton, despite what we think might be a potential problem for him in the future as he develops. But this is also his second professional season. His 117 first at bats as a professional, or his 117 first at bats this season. I think he's got something like 175 for his entire career. These are the best breaking pitches he's ever seen in his life, and it's hard. Baseball's hard. So, I'll say I love what he's done. He's really impressed me. He's played pretty good first base defense as well. He's rangy there. He's lengthy. When I saw him in left field, I think he had 3 or 4 balls hit to him, and he didn't stick out, which I guess is exactly what you want. And he's not terribly fleet of foot, but he'll try to challenge. He'll try to take the extra base every now and again. He's not plodding. He's not necessarily like Kyle Manzardo. Was a little slow. I think Kayfus might be a little bit better on his feet. But
that's a good note, actually. I'm glad you said that because the last homestand, I think he had a double, and I think we were talking in the press box about he was a little bit faster than I expected on the bases. Like he took second base on a line drive down the right field line. I was like, oh, I thought maybe he'd be a little slower as a first baseman, but he was a decent runner. Like, I don't know, fringe average would be the term I would use, which
probably
for first baseman that tracks. And left field, yeah, that's a good point too. Just as long as he doesn't look like he's out of place there, and that's only going to help him too, because obviously, as a first baseman, if you're only going to be a first baseman, you've got to hit, which he's done nothing but hit. So obviously, so far, he's really handled this level. But that's the thing about high A, as I'm sure you've noticed, is like, guys are still trying to figure out how to throw breaking balls for strikes a lot of times. Like this is the level where, that this is why I discount like almost all low A stance because most guys are just trying to figure out how to locate their fastball, not just control, but command. And now at high A, you've got guys who now know how to control their fastball, but also might locate a curveball where they want it a time or two. And that's, like you said, that's where Kayfus is a little late. So it's his first time seeing that. Yeah, I'll be curious to see if the more he sees and the more he works at it, he'll be able to pick it up. I hope he can, because the bat has been, not that he wasn't a good hitting prospect to begin with, but a lot of people in college, when he was in college, questioned about how much power he was going to come into as a pro. And he's shown a lot more power this year than I think I expected. I mean, Joe Naranjo was like similar to like a hit over power type first baseman. And I thought, wow, this kind of seems like the college version of Joe Naranjo. And Joe, I want to say he hit for some power his last year in Lake County.
he did,
it hasn't
but
showed up
it
in
was
Akron.
like he kind of did a switcheroo where he was hit over power. I'm not going to say he was power over hit because he still didn't have a ton of pop. But he had a little bit more swing and miss in his game. He had done a swing change, I think. He had bulked up a bit, and he was more like 230, 240 that second year in high A. And he's getting the bat on the ball in double A to Joe's credit. I love watching him play first base defense. That's a pure joy. If you're around Akron and you're hanging out on Tuesday through Sunday, maybe think about watching some good first base defense from Joe Toronto. I mean, this is not exactly what people think of when they think of like premier positions, but there's just something about like anything near him he gets. But that's another bundle that we can talk about later, maybe.
Yeah. But I think CJ Kayfus has proven he's a little more with the bat than Naranjo.
Yes,
So I've
absolutely.
been pleased by that. I just, like I said, I'd like to see. I don't know. I don't see any sense. Like I know it's 132 whatever plate appearances, but I don't see any sense in not challenging him at Double A just because I know the at bats have to be there. But clearly, I think he can handle high A pitching. It's going to be a test to figure out what Double A breaking balls look like. Let's do two more hitters real quick before we get to the pitching at the end of this. So,
Okay.
Guy Lipscomb, he stole a lot of bases last year, and again, we're going to discount. I don't want to take anything away from anybody who had a good season, but low A, it's just a very hard sample to base anything off of. So he stole a ton of bases last year. Clearly, we see he has speed. You can see it, and he has such good bat to ball ability. And the thing that I'm so intrigued by is that yes, he has the bat to ball skills. Yes, it looks like he makes good swing decisions. He's very mature in his approach, but he is 6'2", almost 200 pounds. He is a little bit, lanky, and he has 2 home runs now. He came into the season with 1 career home run. Now he's got 3, and both were this week. So I'm kind of wondering if there's a little more power in there just because of the frame, but everything else is fun. Like he runs well. He's got a good arm. He gets on base. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of fun skills there. I almost called him Stephen Kwan-lite, like Furman, but I think Lipscomb might be even closer in terms of his ability to put the bat on the ball, and his swing might be a little bit more conventional than Furman's, I guess.
Yeah, if I told you that we were going to talk about a player in high A who's like this toolsy outfielder who runs really well, plays the heck out of the corners, and has this awkward looking swing that leads to, I don't know, an average in I think he's batting 378. You might have thought I was talking about Chase DeLauder, but I'm talking about Guy Lipscomb, who is slashing 378 482, and then I have his OPS is 1,004 as of today. So this is a guy who can probably play center field. They've put him there a few times. He plays right field very well. He's got a very good arm. He takes good routes to the ball. He's a good base runner. He's fast. He has this bat to ball skill, like you talked about, Justin. He can get his bat on most things in the zone. He doesn't chase a ton. And well, if you see his home run highlights, you will see his swing. He moves his head a lot, and that's unusual because usually one of the like kind of the tenets of hitting is you need to be able to be on plane and see what you need to be able to see it all the way through. You start moving your head, you're moving your eyes. But he's hitting the ball anyway, despite that. And I just think you let that happen for as long as it's working. But like with Chase DeLauder, like many people have speculated, you think, okay, go until it doesn't work anymore, and then we'll work on it. And maybe we have that conversation about Guy Lipscomb at some point. But again, he's not played a ton relative to even other starters. It's 90 at bats for him. So I don't know how many plate appearances. I was just kind of like jotting these down in a quick sense before I hopped on. So he's played a little bit less. He's had fewer starts, but when he has started, he's been very impressive, and I'm excited to see what he does going forward. And he is a smaller college guy, right? I think he went to Belmont.
Yep, Belmont University, $275,000 signing bonus in the 5th round. So not like that's pretty good for the 5th round, but that's not a high priority guy. But he's playing a little bit more, and I think he puts the barrel on the ball. Like nobody talks about how like Stephen Kwan doesn't hit the ball hard. He doesn't have high exit velocities, and I assume that's the case for Guy Lipscomb. But that new stat casting they talked about where you square up balls, and even if you don't hit it at a high exit velocity or you find the barrel somehow, and Kwan does that, I get the sense that Guy is very similar. Now he's a little bit older for the level. Again, another guy we'd love to see doing this at Double A, but he is fun to watch in Lake County. Yes. I will say, like he does. I don't think there's one thing he doesn't do well on the field. Like I said, I'm wondering if there's more power in there just because of the frame. He looks like a strong kid, but everything else, like he looks like a 4-tool player. He looks like he can do everything well. Maybe maybe that's a fourth outfielder, but we also said that about Kwan before he broke out, so maybe there's more in there. I think there is.
Right. Was Kwan also a fifth rounder?
Ooh, that's a good
Was
question. He might have been
fourth
he
or
might have
fifth?
been anywhere between the 4th and 6th range. I'm gonna look that up real quick.
Yeah, that's just kind of like itching my brain. Like we're doing the Quan comparison, and I think, well, maybe they did end up in the fifth round.
And
So
funny enough, guy got more money. Kwan signed for 185, so even less. Pick 163, and goodness, guy was 151. How about that? That is very weird.
Yeah, and I'll say Quan is like mechanically, classically perfect, and in a lot of ways, you would feel a little bad about comparing someone mechanically to Stephen Kwan. These two guys are in very different spots physically as well. Lipscomb's got more moving parts, longer leverage. So if he can continue to make consistent contact, find that barrel like he has been, this guy, it's weird to say about a fifth rounder who's been in the system for 2 full seasons. This is his 2nd full season.
Yeah.
And but you could look at that and say, well, maybe this was a gem, you do find them.
Yeah, I don't think I'm trying to you wouldn't compare a 6'2" player to a 5'9" player very often, but yeah, there could be something there that makes it real. So I don't think, just from watching him, like I said, you've probably seen him more. We were talking about Kayfus and the breaking stuff. I haven't seen any of the same issues from him so far. I think he handles everything fairly well.
Right. And I mean, in as much as anyone who sees a good changeup at this level is going to struggle with that good changeup, provided that pitcher's got any command on their fastball that day.
Yeah.
Like that would be the exception. When a guy like that is on, they're going to own this level, and Lipscomb hasn't been an exception to things like that, but no one in the lineup has been, and that beats major leaguers. So, I mean, that's just the way it goes sometimes.
And there's been a good amount of pitching in high A this year. I feel like we've seen guys from Lansing come in and Fort Wayne. We'll see what West Michigan has, but I will say the pitching in high A this year has been pretty good for the most part in terms of consistent quality over previous years. Maybe it's just getting out of the pandemic cycle in terms of guys finally moving up levels. Did you want to talk about Cooper Ingold, or did you want to move on to the pitchers?
So briefly on Engel, it looks like he had a little bit of a shoulder issue at some point in time. There have been a couple of games where he left a little early, and then I've personally noticed that when he does the throwdown, he kind of like rips it back a little bit. It's not like how you would take that throw down in a game if you're trying to throw a runner out. It's more like a ritualistic thing. And like I can't help but feel like maybe that's having a little bit of an impact on his production at the plate. But this is a guy who a lot of people thought was contact over power in his draft year, and that the hit tool or the stick generally would carry him as an offensive profiling catcher. I thought that he was really athletic and that he had good movements behind the dish, and I still think that. But the arm could be an issue if this is more than just the shoulder thing, because he's getting run on quite a bit. And while he might have a little bit of a lingering shoulder injury, he's still hitting 293. I mean, it's not really a lot of power though. I was talking to Justin previous to now, and we were talking about like what this looks like. I thought maybe like Mike Redmond, a guy who's just a contact hitter behind the dish. He's gonna hit 270 with a 670 OPS, and he's gonna be your like personal catcher for your ace or something like that potentially, which is Redmond ended up being that for 12 years. So that's a professional player, and that's a good player because it's a hard position. But yeah, I think that there's more to him. I hope that there's a little bit more power there. The swing has kind of looked a little not exactly ferocious lately. If his shoulder's bothering him, that's probably why.
Yeah, I might have mentioned that last time I recorded because it was after a homestand. I said it looked very choppy, and I said it just looked like he was using all of his hands. Like there wasn't a whole lot of front end movement on the swing, and he's not striking out a lot, which is good. I mean, and he still has a good eye at the plate to fall back on in these situations. It is interesting though, if the shoulder's bothering him, they're letting him play because Johnny Tincher was hurt for a little bit there, and now
Yeah,
he's
I
back.
think he broke a finger.
Yeah, I think he just came back. So, and I would love to get into him today, but I saw Sunday's box score or Saturdays where he had like 2 or 3 pass balls, and I was very surprised to see that from him. But maybe it's just because he's coming back. But I wonder if Engel played a lot more because it was basically just him and Zach Fascia for a while because they didn't have Tincher. Maybe they'll take a look at Engel's shoulder and now that Tincher's back, but Tincher's also kind of a future backup to a future coach. So
yeah, and now that you mention it, there was this Kevin Rivas who came in.
Oh yeah,
he's a shortstop, but they had him catching, so they were willing to do that and give Cooper Engel a day besides the Zach Fascia day, which is usually Sunday, and kind of spell him a little bit, let him DH a little. But he's been in the lineup pretty consistently when he's not been resting the shoulder, which was more of a first or second homestand thing.
Yeah, it's just been lingering a little bit. Yeah, Rivas is a converted infielder. I want to say he spent most of last year in Arizona just working on that transition. I don't know what that's going to lead for him, but he might just be a backup for now, just something to keep his career going. But catching in the system right now is not the best, and that's a conversation we could really spend a lot of time on. Like right now, it's Cody Huff and hopefully Engel, and then after that, Ralphie's not a catcher at this point. So take a catcher every year in the draft. That is my hope. Is like I always say, take a quarterback in every draft. If you're an NFL team, take a catcher in every draft, maybe even 2.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to some.
Not to interrupt, but I definitely think a couple catchers would be a good thing.
Yeah, even if they're just org guys, like you just need those guys. And if one of them pops, then boom, you've got yourself a great piece in the organization. And if you don't have room for it at the major league level, you trade them because teams always need catching and you want to create some surplus value for yourself. That's how teams look at it. And I don't understand why the system is so lack of catching for that reason.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah, it was a problem on the road trip for pitching in general. I mean, Sunday's game was 13-9. 14-9. The Captains did win, which is good. And Saturday's was ugly. You messaged me and you were like, it's the 3rd inning and it's like 13-11 or whatever, 8 to something. It was bad. I looked and I'm like, yeah, this is a 2-hour game and it's in the 3rd inning. This is a problem. And that was a Parker Messick start, which I was very surprised to see. And I'm going to say one start is not going to tell me that, okay, this guy's not ready for AA, because we saw what he did last year. We saw most of the year he's dominated. I think he's ready for AA. And when we get into the AA pitching, it'll be clear too, because some of those guys are ready to move up. But the ERA has been a little higher this year for Messick, and the strikeouts are down. Not a lot. The walk rate's the same, but even despite the hiccup this weekend, I don't see any reason for Messick to throw 3 more starts in high A at this point. But I'm sure he will, because that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it will too. Now I have a little bit. I've seen a lot of Parker Messick. I've seen a lot of Trenton Denholm. I've seen a couple Austin Peterson starts, and then the guy who started today, Carter Spivey. I don't know how much we need to talk about. He's an undrafted free agent signed in January. He's been okay. He's been what they've asked him to be. More alluding to his position in this starting rotation being a question of depth at the beginning of the year for their pitching rotation that I think they probably should feel a little better about based on what's happening in Lynchburg. But irrespective of that, Messick, the past few times I've seen him, he's a good pitcher and he's a competitor and he knows how to attack hitters, but he has had a little bit of a struggle with his command and control. At least since the calendars turned to May, the last few times I've seen him. I think he had 3 or 4 walks in both of those slates, and he had another 2 or 3 in the game on Saturday, where he gave up 9 and 2 2/3, which is, I mean, it's making his ERA look a lot worse than it was previous. It was sub 3 before that start, and it brought up to a 4.54.
10 walks.
Yeah,
10 walks last 3 games. Yeah, he's only got 15, but yeah, 10 of them have come the last 3 starts. So you're right on.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what's going on. His stuff. One of the things about being the stringer is that you are the only person at Lake County that gets like a readout of the velocities as they happen. Like every other place has some sort of radar gun that displays publicly what's happening, but for some reason I'm the only person who gets to see that. or the stringer is the only person who gets to see that. So I can say that, he in April would top 94, but it's not like he's struggling with velocity or anything. Even deep into starts, he's still up around 91 to 93, and he's trying to mix his pitches pretty well. I think he has a better control of his slurve, that kind of like intermediate breaking pitch. I don't know if it's a sweeper or a slurve or what you'd want to call it, but it's a slow breaker. And as he went deeper into the last start I saw him, he started relying on that a little bit more to take strikes. And I don't know how long that works, but I do think that he has the tools to navigate a lineup in Double-A if he can throw strikes. And this was not a problem for him previous to really all of last year. I saw a lot of him last year too. He was pretty good about. Usually when he had a blow up, it was because there were some hits that were falling, and then he gave up a big one. And that happened. That can happen to anybody. That's very Logan Allen-esque. So I think you want to see him be challenged, but the past few starts have been a little. If someone leapfrogged him to get that first call up, it might be a guy like Denholm who's been there as long, or maybe leaping a little longer, or it would be strange for Austin Peterson to be the one, but they're all like the same age. Peterson might be older.
Peterson, I think, is a little older. I want to say Peterson is 24. Messick will not turn 24 until the end of the year. Season will be over by then. So Peterson's 24. I want to say he might turn 25 in season.
Yeah, I think he's might be an October 25. Baby or something like
September.
That. Yeah. Now we can kind of rope in Peterson here. He also had a galling line in Lansing this past time.
It does not look like anything else he's done.
No. Well, there's one thing that's consistent. He didn't walk anybody. But this time, and I've been worried about this for a little while, it's like he throws too many strikes sometimes. And when I'm watching him, I think of Josh Tomlin, because the stuff is 90 to 92. He'll top 93. He has this pretty good slider. He can mix in a changeup. He can keep you off balance. When he's consistently finding his spots, which is tougher to gauge with a guy with his control, when he's commanding to the corners, he's able to make it work. He can get through most lineups, and he can strike out a fair few guys out without a ton of overwhelming stuff. I think that he is an interesting guy to challenge. I think that he got very challenged by Lansing, and we'll see how he goes from here, because this is his first this is his first year starting at high A. I think he got promoted mid-season last year, if I recall correctly.
No, he was all year in Lynchburg.
Single A all year.
Again, didn't understand why, but the numbers weren't like great last year. The thing he's done this year is, like you said, the control is great. He is not throwing. He's throwing nothing but strikes, maybe too many to his detriment. And as you were saying that, I was like, yeah, that sounds like Josh Tomlin. So I'm glad you said Josh Tomlin. He's striking out more guys, which is, I was expecting that, because he was a strikeout leader in college. Like the year they took him, I want to say he was like top 5 in strikeouts. It was him and Justin Campbell, and I want to say maybe even Dylan DeLucia. Like they took 3 of the top 5 guys in college that year in strikeouts in their draft, and I thought that was great. And then he didn't miss any bats in low A last year, which was really strange considering his college success and how old he was. And I don't know if he's going to be a guy who gets strikeouts at the next level, because, like you said, he doesn't have that kind of stuff. But you can live in the low 90s with a good off-speed pitch and control and be like a Tomlin. Although I think Tomlin had more of like a kitchen sink approach. He threw everything. I was thinking kind of like an Adam Plutko guy. And that's great, because, to get through a major league season, you need, 9 starters. And Plutko filled that 6 starter role really well for a couple of years. I keep looking at Austin Peterson. He is like the biggest guy. Like he's huge.
Yeah.
I keep thinking,
6'6", 240 something.
Yeah,
he's massive.
Like there's got to be 95 in there.
You'd hope, you'd think, and I don't know how to explain that, but I will say that maybe that's part of why he does get some swing and miss on his 90 to 92, 93. fastball. He's got long arms and he gets down the mound pretty well. He's pretty athletic. So those things probably help add a little bit to what would otherwise be kind of unimpressive looking stuff.
Yeah, probably plays a little more. He's probably got some deception and some extension of it. You know, we saw the same thing. I don't know. Were you around when Mason Hickman was in Lake County? Like
I
same
was in
thing. Like
the
Mason.
I was in the clubhouse that year, and that
Yeah.
was Mason had some good ones, and that loopy curveball that I really wanted to work so badly because it's so pretty, but it was also extremely hittable. I mean, he's a AAA, and he's not been awful. He's finding a groove as a reliever. I'm rooting for Mason. He's a good kid. But yeah, it is very similar in terms of because he was 6'6". He is 6'6".
And those guys both throw a lot of strikes too, which is not always easy for a guy that tall because you see a lot of moving parts. Like, I don't think we're going to see Alex Clemmy in Lake County this year, but he's a 6'5" dude. His delivery is super funky, which is a whole different story. Yeah. But you know, he might be. Hopefully, he is not the next Steven Hajar, who we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about today. But hey, he did have a scoreless outing.
Yes, if I could briefly mention the two innings that he pitched, I think that might have been today. 2 walks, but 3 strikeouts, and no one got hurt this time. Yeah, and all the best to Steve. I'm sure he'll get. I no one feels good about hitting someone. He had a game where he hit someone in the helmet after, and then hit another person in the shoulder immediately after, or I don't remember the sequence exactly, but no one feels good after things like that happen. And it's a tough game, and he's a big kid with a lot of he's got a lot to take into account when he's throwing. And oddly, he is a lefty, is very good against righties. But the lefties are the ones that he struggles because everything kind of runs in towards them, runs an arm side on him. So he hit a lot of batters.
Yeah. Does he? I have to look the next homestand. I mean, he was a reliever on Sunday, so maybe that'll be his role going forward, which you and I both think would be good for everybody. I wonder if he works. I have to look specifically now what side of the rubber he works on, because like I kind of wonder, like now you're saying everything runs into lefties, like if he needs to move to the left side of the rubber. Yeah, maybe a move to the third base side would help.
Yeah.
We're not pitching coaches though, so that's not official advice, but yeah. All right, let's wrap things up with a couple of quick hitters. Talking about some other guys at other levels because you follow the system pretty closely too. I'm buying in on Doug Nikhazy. I have to be honest. Like out of all these guys from that 21 pitching class, I'm buying in. Like Mace is looking okay. Davenport's improved. Mace has improved. But I think Doug Nikhazy is the guy from this group who is starting to take a step forward. This new arm slot of his, throwing more strikes. He's still throwing low 90s, up to 94. The slider's gotten better because of the new arm slot. The curveball isn't there anymore as much because of the arm slot, but he's throwing strikes. He's got two above average pitches. As long as he's healthy and throwing strikes, I'm ready. I think the AAA pitching is terrible. It's bad. Move Doug Nikhazy to AAA, like for everybody's best interest. You can move Messick up or Denholm. I think Denholm deserves it too, but I don't know how much longer we can watch some of these guys pitch in AAA. I know I've got buddies that work there, and they're like, "Wow, this is some of the most problematic pitching I've ever seen in the system."
Yeah.
So I'm hoping for all of our sakes that Doug Nikhazy is back.
Yeah, it would be an encouraging development for that 21 pitching class for sure, because they really they went in on some, I don't know, higher profile, high picks for sure. And Tommy Mace was a high profile guy, a first round pick the year before, I believe. Might not. No, not a first round pick, but someone that was in the mix for a first round pick the year he was drafted, and then
he was drafted in high school.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And he is a guy that a lot of people paid attention to. But then Doug Nikhazy had this amazing college World Series run, and he's so fun to watch. Now he's a little bit of a different pitcher now, as you're alluding to, with his change in arm angle, but it didn't seem to take away his deception, which is the big thing because he does need it for the level of the stuff that he has. Because he has always been hard to hit, but what's gotten him into trouble is the walks, always the walks. And if you are not throwing so many balls, if you're able to rein it in to some degree, then yeah, absolutely, you should be starting in Columbus instead of multiple people in that rotation, and they're major league pitchers, but they're relievers. Adam Mahler was a major league pitcher. He probably isn't a starter at this point. He is in the rotation.
Wes Parsons on Sunday.
Wes Parsons is pitching. Connor Gillespie has been in the rotation off and on. I mean, I love Xavier Curry. He's a great guy. He's struggled a little bit at AAA since he came back down to the level after his debut for the season, which was good. So that's frustrating. And it's a tough hitting environment, and they play in tough ballparks, and their home ballpark is a bang box. But all these things together, I do think they need to start calling those guys up to AAA, because they're the next wave of guys that you want to see in the majors. If you're faltering, you don't want to have to call on Wes Parsons for a spot start. You don't want to have to call up Adam Mahler. You don't want to have to do all that. You feel good about Curry. You know, he's been there. But beyond that, you need more options. And with Joey Cantillo on the shelf especially, hopefully he's back soon, you need to have more realistic options. So between Doug Nikhazy, Tommy Mace, and maybe Aaron Davenport as well, give them a chance. And I think that's all you can really ask. And there's a lot of older pitchers in the Lake County rotation who have been at high A for a number of years, or it's at least their second season, and they can give you some options for Double A as you backfill. Now, what you replace them with from low A up to high A beyond Matt Wilkinson, we'll see. But that's neither here nor there. For the big league team and for the organization as a whole, I think that letting these guys go up to AAA and get challenged so that you don't have to do what you did with like Aaron Savali and Zach Plesac, their debut years where they had basically no time in Columbus before they went out and pitched for your big league team. You need to start thinking about what that looks like in June or July, as you need arms.
Yeah, and you ran into that issue in 21 with Henches and Giancarlos Mejia, who were not ready and didn't have any options to do that, but there they were. So, yeah, you'd like to avoid those where possible. And for all these 21 pitchers, I mean, Davenport is looking better. He's not walking as many guys. They've made an adjustment to him. He's only throwing out of the stretch now. That seems to be working, which makes a lot of sense because he did have a comp for a guy who's not really tall. He did have a lot of moving parts in his delivery in high A, I feel like.
He's got a violent delivery.
Yes, he does. For a guy who doesn't throw that hard. But I love his curveball too. And now you're seeing some, like, again, I think he's an Adam Plutko type too. Like, he's a guy who could be like a 6-starter, 7-starter. Mace, I was hoping for a lot more with Mace. Like, he's still only throwing like 92. You can get by with that. And I think some of the stuff, like the curveball's good. But yeah, all these guys they invested heavily in the 21 pitching class. Nikhazy, Davenport, Mace, Jack Leftwich is a reliever now, unfortunately, but he's been okay. And Ryan Webb, I was expecting more to Ryan Webb. His control is still continues to be an issue, but you know, he's missing bats. All these guys though are taking various degrees of steps this year developmentally, which is great. And they all are going to be Rule 5 eligible this fall or winter. So like, you'd love to see, okay, is Doug Nikhazy a dude? Is Davenport a dude? Like, at some point, considering how many injuries you have in your rotation, you'd love to get a look at them. And it makes a ton of sense. I also I think you made a great point earlier. I wanted to back you up with what you said. Doug Nikhazy to me has always been someone who is very hard to hit, and it goes to the stats. Like in high A, 93 innings, 59 hits. And even when he couldn't throw a strike in 2023, 102 innings, 92 hits. Like, he always gives up less than a hit per inning pitched. And I feel like that's a pretty good, I know whip is more of a story of what happened versus what's predictive. But if you are not a guy you can get hits off of, you know, he's limiting walks now. He's only got 5 hits allowed in 18 innings this year. Teams can't hit him. So if the walks are gone, then I think there's real development there. So that was a good point you made too. And then real quickly, Lenny Torres, no earned runs off of him this year. I like Lenny a lot. He's gone through a lot as a pro player, a lot in his life. The fastball to me has always been very straight. It's very hittable, but he throws 99. So if he can control it, you know, it's okay. You know, 14% walk rate. You're going to love that, but we're at 13 innings now and he has allowed 6 hits and no runs. So I hope this is a turn in the right direction for Lenny as a reliever.
You know, I'm glad you brought up Lenny because I don't think I sent it, but I screen grabbed the box score from the Akron game on Saturday and said, I was getting ready to send you, you know, this is a 2-inning outing for Lenny Torres, and we were talking. I hear you talking about what you see for Andrew Walters and developmentally what challenges they throw at a guy that they're looking to call up. Is Lenny Torres making himself an option for this club at some point? Now he throws hard enough to where you'd think about it, but I've seen a lot of his struggles. But when his slider looks different, based on what I saw in spring training versus what I saw for a lot of 2023. He really struggled to both command and make it so that people had to respect the slider. He didn't get as many chases as he wanted to on that pitch when he was with Lake County. He's getting more strikeouts with that pitch, and he's having more success in Akron. But we'll see. We'll see. I think that there's a real pitcher in there, and I'm just relieved for him. I mean, it's got to feel so good to go out and have consistent success every night after the struggles he had personally, professionally in Lake County. It's got to feel right to feel like the train's on the tracks again.
Yeah, I hope so. He is a good kid. I hope the best for him. And yeah, like you said, the slider is a good pitch if people will have to respect it. Angel Hanau turned 20 as we're recording this. Happy birthday, Angel Hanau. Got to be the first guy. Got to be the first guy that's up in Lake County. We were talking earlier about if Nate Furman gets promoted. Hanau is having a great year in Lynchburg, and this is part of his third year. So he ended 2022 there. He spent all year there last year, and then this year he's back again. And for a guy who's highly rated as a prospect, I think it's time for him to see high A the way he's hitting the ball. And if, like I said, I gotta think Nate Furman is the first of the infielders to get the bump to Akron, and you would go ahead and just give Hanau his at bats at that point. So let's hope sometime this summer you and I are watching Angel Hanau from the Lake County press box.
That will be exciting. I think that he's ready for the opportunity based on everything that I've seen from pressers and from press boxes. And certainly Furman is deserving of promotion to Double-A. So there will be an opportunity.
Can't go a podcast without mentioning Tugboat. We want Tugboat in Lake County as well. You know, we're talking about Messick going up and Denholm and Peterson. Obviously, Tugboat is the next the guy that would get those innings there. And the issue is who's going to pitch his innings in Lynchburg. That's the real problem. Yeah. Hopefully, I really hope it doesn't go this far because the ACL season runs into like June or July. I'd hate for Tugboat to still be in low A in July. But they might need some of those guys in the ACL to develop their arms and stretch out and send them to Lynchburg before they can send Tugboat to Lake County and replace his innings in Lynchburg. But there's plenty of guys ready for that upward move. I don't have a prediction when. I really don't. I'm hoping it's not July just based on the calendar. But, 8 strikeouts, 5 innings for the second straight start.
Yeah, and to me, I don't know. I have no inside information. I'm just here to watch the games. Really, when I'm doing my thing, we don't really get a scoop of any sort of in that box. But mid-June would be honestly pretty late, pretty conservative, in line with what this organization's done in the past, and it would fit their MO with the guys that are up above him right now. They took their time with Parker Messick, and they've let Trenton Denholm pitch at this level for a while, and
a year and a half.
Yeah. I think that if anyone goes before Messick, it will be Denholm, and it would not surprise me. And there are a couple guys in Lake County's mix of folks that are probably not starting pitchers, so you could find a way to make it work. If you can have Wilkinson come up and force the issue and just be a good, consistent pitcher, that would be nice. You don't really know a lot about guys like Jake Miller, who wasn't in the rotation the last go around. Carter Spivey, again, I don't really know what he is or if he could be the back end of a piggyback. Really, Wilkinson could do that too. If you're worried about his load, his innings, I know he was a JUCO guy. So I don't know how many innings he has thrown in the past couple of years. He probably wouldn't do something like Peterson where he threw 100 innings in low A. But, that's also doomsday. We don't want to talk about like 100 innings in low A for Tugboat Wilkinson.
Well, I will say Parker Messick has trimmed down since he got drafted. He was a little bit bigger, but I will say as a bigger guy myself, having 2 hefty lefties in the rotation at one time, if Denholm goes up, I'm all here for that. And honestly, the Tugboat name for the captain's promotion wise, they better be talking about it already. They should be preparing everything. All right, two more things before we get out of here, if you got time.
Yep.
Who do you want to see first of Schneemann, Rodriguez, Valera? Because it was a rough day for Florial at the ballpark. It's been a rough go for Laureano. The Gabriel Arias thing is out there. Who do you want to see first of these guys? Because I feel like all three of these guys need a look this year. Obviously, Schneemann's not in the 40, and I don't really know what his future role is myself, but which of these three guys do you want to see first?
Okay, so I have a strong affinity for Daniel Schneemann, and this goes back to 21. Like I mentioned previously, I interned with the captains, and I was around a lot of those guys for long periods of that season. He was on a team with like Austin Wade and Jonathan Engelman playing corner outfield with them, and Austin Wade was a great outfielder who didn't hit the way that he hoped he would. Daniel Schneemann went out and played the outfield after playing a bunch of games on the dirt, and he was the best outfielder on the roster. I'm convinced he can do anything on a baseball field. So I would love to see Daniel Schneemann play a little bit because I think he can plug all of the potential problems of not having Gabriel Arias if there are winds of change going in that direction. Who's to say? I think that he can spell an infielder or an outfielder. It's just a tremendously versatile role, and this organization's really focused on versatility. And he's hitting the heck out of the ball. He's really earned the look as a 27-year-old. Maybe he'll be like a Jeff McNeil late bloomer guy, and he ends up playing with one organization the rest of his career. That's a fun guy to have on your team. If it's if low ceiling, so be it. Don't get it twisted. I love Jonathan Rodriguez. When he was at Lake County in 2022, he hit some of the hardest hit balls I've ever seen anyone hit. And he could hit to all fields with tremendous power. And some of his at-bats were almost comical in that he would look lost at the plate for a few pitches and then just hit this mammoth shot to the opposite field. Like, how did that happen? Where was this guy the entire at-bat? And to take nothing away from Valera, who's getting an opportunity, his underlying batted ball data, which we can actually see, he and Rodriguez we can actually see, and with Schneemann now in AAA, we obviously can see there too. I'm used to being frustrated about not being able to see these things, so it feels novel to point it out. But Valera's batted ball data is quite good. He's hitting the ball hard. He gets pretty good launch angle when he makes contact. He takes a lot of pitches. He'll walk a lot. He'll strike out a bit because he's got a little bit of a hole in the upper quadrant of his strike zone. I still think that there's a player there, and I think I'd rather see him than Florial. If there must be a replacement for Florial, I think Valera makes sense. They almost mimic each other in skill set, where I think Florial kind of takes the strikeout rate to the extreme for what Valera does. They'll be in the same neighborhood, but Florial is going to get there in a more frustrating way, and I think Valera will walk more. Rodriguez hits so hard, and he's not the best outfielder in the world. He's got a great arm. I don't see, if you're thinking about Ramon Laureano's future with this team as a matter of weeks instead of even a matter of the end of the season, I think in either event you need to evaluate this guy on your 40-man roster. And Jonathan Rodriguez is continuing to hit the ball hard, continuing to do what he does well. So they all have a case. I think that my answer will be Daniel Schneemann can do more things for a Major League Baseball club right now. And for where they are in their contention, I should say, there's got to be some appeal, I think, to the front office and to the manager, who Schneemann made a very big impression on in spring training by most accounts, to have a guy who can be a little bit of a chess piece for you.
Yeah, the Jeff McNeil, not that you're copying him as a player, but just in terms of the timeline, that makes a lot more sense. Now, I was thinking more like a lefty David Fry. Obviously, can play all of. I mean, Fry is not a shortstop, but Schneemann can do everything but catch basically. But I wouldn't even put that past him in an emergency if needed. But hopefully, that never happens. But yeah, I agree. I think he's a guy you could bring up, and if you don't play him for 4 days, like, you're not really worried about it at the end of the day. But I think he's a guy. This team certainly could use somebody who draws walks. There's no doubt about that. I think he can do that. Although I am so skeptical anymore about if those walks really translate to the major league level because of the gap right now. Like I thought Will Brennan was a guy who would draw walks and he just swings at everything. So now I'm kind of burned by that, even though he hit the walk-off home run and I love me some Willie baseball, but I thought he'd walk more.
No, I thought
Valera,
he'd walk more too. I mean, he is walking more
yeah,
than last year this year, but he walked so little last year that it's basically a meaningless statement.
it is. Yeah, I had a lot higher expectations. Maybe he'll continue to do that, but I really had high expectations for Will. But the walk-off home run was fun.
Yeah.
Valera, I agree with you. Like very similar talent to Florial, and they've had a similar career path too, because Valera has been in the minors a long time, hasn't gotten a shot mostly because of health, but Florial sat in the minors for a long time. It really wasn't because of health. They just never turned to him, and they both swing and miss a fair bit. They both have power. They're both not great defenders in the outfield, but they're not horrible. You know, Florial's misguided play on Sunday, notwithstanding. Both got great arms, but you know, Valera's out of options at the end of the year, so you want to see that. Rodriguez, I have concerns about how he's going to fare against major league breaking stuff. I think we know he can hit a fastball. Like it's
Right.
it's sort of the CJ Kayfus conversation. Like if you throw him a fastball, you've probably made a mistake. But if you throw him a breaking ball, he's probably going to chase unless you hang it, and then he'll bang it. And then he's got a great throwing arm, but there's a lot of Oscar Gonzalez in that profile too. That you're like, I would probably take him out of the outfield after the fifth inning if you're winning and you want to preserve defense. But I think they all need to look at some point this year, because as fun as it's winning right now for Cleveland, there's still a lot of answers they need to get on guys, and that's the fun part. Like they're winning, but people got to remember too, you're coming into this year with a lot of answers on guys you need to get. Willie and I put out a mock draft on Saturday. I could not hold off any longer. I posted it. That was round 1 and comp round. I'll post 2 and 3 coming up this week, so go take a look at that. Since I know you're following the draft and we've talked about it in the press box in Lake County, why don't you go ahead and just throw your name out there? Who are you backing for the 1-1?
All right, so I've been going back and forth about this for weeks, and I do like. There's a part of me that's like, oh, don't overthink it. Charlie Condon is ripping the seams off the ball every time he makes contact. No, I think I need to overthink it. I think I need to go with Travis Bazzana. And I think I need to do that because you will probably not find a more motivated player in the world than Travis Bazzana. He is making he's been a sensational player for all of his career at Oregon State. He's done it in different ways. He's got really good wood bat data, which is something that this organization really cares about. He did that before he spent off seasons hanging out with like Ahmed Rosario in the Driveline studio, taking like batting practice with EKGs on their chests, and
their boxers. Yeah.
Coming back from that, he's kind of tapped into a little bit more power. Now, is that the bats being wonky? Is that the ball being weird in college? I don't know. Part of me doesn't care. If it was a guy that had 1 year breakout, it would scare me a little bit more. But Travis Bazzana has been a stud for 3 years. And I mean, I'm sure he wants to be the number 1 overall pick. If he wants to be the number 1 overall pick as an Australian national, which would be a huge deal for him and for his country and for Australian baseball generally. I mean, I'm not saying that you should leverage people, because he will have earned every dollar he gets, but he might take a little bit less off the top. He might do a Carlos Correa and say, I want to be 1-1. And then you end up with you end up with a great player, and you end up with a little bit more money to play with down the board. I don't think that's a bad idea at all.
I would agree with you. I don't think there's a bad pick. I mean, and in future episodes of this, we'll have Willie back on. We'll talk more draft, because I'm ready to go all in. Like at this point, I've spent more time in the draft than I have in the minor league system this year, which is unlike me, but it's a 1-1 year. So of course you're going to do that. But I don't think there's a bad pick to be made between the two of them. I do prefer Bazzana myself, which is why you're getting invited back, because you agreed with me. No, that's no. We've talked about this multiple times in the press box. I don't think there's a bad pick to be made between the two of them. I have some more concern about holes in the game of Condon and guys who are 6'6", and that's generally an outlier. And then guys that are good at 6'6" are exceptions and not the rule. And Bazzana, I know everyone's concerned that he's maxed out projection wise, but I don't know. The Guardians' first round picks, if you go back and look, the first round picks are pretty bad. Like there's Gavin, there's Bo, Tristan is a comp pick, but he's in there. And then after that, it's very, very ugly. I mean, too soon on Chase and all those guys. But the history going back, like after CC Sabathia, you have Francisco Lindor, and then after that, it's pretty bad. So like, I don't think you want to get this wrong, and Bazana gives you the best chance to me to not get this wrong, but also get a very, very high level player. And like you said, I think he is more likely to take the under slot deal, and that's something everyone's going to do. Every team does this.
Yes.
And
yes, this isn't a Dolan's are cheap moment. This is
right.
this is a negotiation moment. This is about what the MLB draft looks like as a system. Now it has its ups and downs, it has its merits, but the Dolans, the organization, will likely spend to the last dollar on this draft, regardless of what they do for this 1-1 deal. And to that end, you might say, well, what would it matter to take the under slot? But if it changes what you get at 36, and if it changes the type of player that's available to you further down, say it's a prep pitcher, which is scary, then you might get a Cam Caminiti or something like that down the board further than you expected that person to be, or something along those lines. I don't really know. I don't really want to speculate because I would be all college people. So in either event, it's not us saying they're going to be cheap to do this. It's us saying they're looking to optimize the entire draft and get a very good centerpiece of that draft at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. It does matter what they do down the board. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very nerve-wracking as it gets a lot closer. Yeah, don't screw this up. That's all I can say is don't. I don't think there's a bad pick between two of them, but there are bad picks.
Hagen Smith. I wouldn't say that'd be a bad pick, but it'd be scary.
I can understand the rationale in Hagen Smith. I would prefer a Bazana or Condon, but I can understand the rationale. And then beyond that, like there's Braden Montgomery, and then there's probably nobody else. Like Chase Burns, too much relief risk for me. Plus, at some point, he's going to have Tommy John. Let's just be honest. And
and Hagen already has too.
Correct. Yeah. So there's a lot of ways it could go wrong, but I don't think they'll overthink it. And they'll spend, like you said, they'll spend the money, and they'll generally spend to a fine. Let's just hope they do a good job. I'm looking forward to diving into more of that somehow, more than I already have. All right, Mike, I appreciate you jumping on, and you want people to follow you, tell them where you're at, or anything else you got out there that you're doing. I know, are you doing some stuff with Quincy every once in a while too?
Yeah, every now and again, I'll be on the Guardians Fancast party line. We'll record those on Tuesdays. They get released Wednesday mornings. I'm only there every so often. Probably won't be this week because, as I mentioned earlier, I'll be at Lake County having some major league fun. So as
with the captains, you got to sing it. If you're gonna say it, you got to sing it.
Like I can't put bars on the record. But in either event, I shout out to that podcast. I really enjoy working and talking with Quincy and the group. And my Twitter is at mmahoney157. If you, for some reason, want even more of this, because most of my feed is either politics, I don't understand. You don't have to follow. Okay, I won't be offended. Or baseball. So like an 80-20 baseball to politics. If you can look past my liberal ways, then go ahead and give a follow.
I don't think we gotta worry about that too much. But yeah, Mike's a good dude. I enjoy our talks in the press box. I won't see you on this homestand, unfortunately, but hopefully I will catch you again soon. It was good to run into you Friday, and good to chat. Appreciate you making an hour to stay on here and talk about baseball and bring your captain's insights to the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Justin. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah. All right, check out the newsletter. Make sure you're reading the mock draft, and make sure you listen to the podcast over there with Quincy and Mike, and then make sure you're listening to Locked On Guardians too, of course, every day. Doing that here soon. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again in, let's say, 2 weeks. I don't know. We'll be back.